Hello everyone, I am Dan and I am your Design Journey Art Class expert for drawing in perspective. In this session we will be learning about 3 points perspective. So as always we'll start by looking at some basic techniques, drawing boxes in 3 points perspective, and then we will apply what we learn and create a final drawing. Now whilst these sessions can stand alone, I advise watching the previous sessions if you haven't already. Now to follow along with this session you will need a pack of pencils like these that I have been using here. You will need a sharpener and an eraser and a ruler and of course some paper to draw. So in the previous sessions we have taken a look at 1 point perspective and 2 points perspective, and in this session we are going to be looking at 3 points perspective. Now like the name suggests, this means that we are going to be drawing using 3 vanishing points. So let's start as usual by drawing out some boxes. As always, I want you to follow along with me, and if you have been following along with these sessions, you will be familiar with how to start a drawing in perspective. We start by establishing the position of the horizon line. Here I will place this lower down on the page, and the next step is to add some vanishing points. Like I said, we are going to be placing 3 this time. Here I will place 1 at either side of the horizon line, like I did when we had looked at 2 points perspective, and now I need to place a third vanishing point, and you might be wondering where this one goes. Well, the third vanishing point is an exception to the rule that all vanishing points exist on the horizon line, because this vanishing point goes above or below the horizon line, and you'll often find that the third vanishing point is far off the page. Here I will draw a box drawn in 3 points perspective and explain more as I do that. So let's imagine that there is a third vanishing point above this horizon line far off the page. Let's say that it's central to our drawing plane as well, which in this case is our paper here. So I can start by drawing the front edge of this box, and here this will be a vertical line. Because it isn't aligned with that third vanishing point, it remains vertical, but you should know that when drawing in 3 points perspective, our vertical lines are also converging, and they converge to that third point. So here, like we have done previously, I construct this box by taking 2 sets of lines from the top and bottom of this edge to the left and right vanishing points. I then need to add the edges for the side planes, but instead of these being vertical, like they are when drawing in 1 or 2 points perspective, these will now converge, and we need to direct them to that third vanishing point, which is off the page, which means we have to estimate the position of these lines. That first edge I had drawn out appears vertical, but it is still converging, it's just directly below the vanishing point. And so it's helpful to find that centre line, because you know that your lines converging to that third vanishing point at either side will appear to be fanning outwards from here. It helps estimate the direction of the lines that you are drawing. The box here can be constructed the same as before, taking some lines to each vanishing point. So it's important to understand that when drawing in 3 points perspective, all 3 sets of lines will be converging to a vanishing point, and that third vanishing point is often far off the page, because if it is too close, then the drawing can become distorted because there is more of a drastic convergence. If that doesn't make sense, then do not worry, because here I'm going to draw out multiple boxes and that should give you more of an idea. So this time I will place my horizon line higher up on the page, meaning we will see the top of these boxes that I'm drawing. Again, I will place 2 vanishing points at either side, and the third vanishing point will be down below, far off the page. So again, I'm going to start by drawing out the edge of a box, which will appear as a vertical line, because again, this is directly in a line with that third vanishing point, which is central down below. So using the left vanishing point and the line that I have just drawn, I can draw out a side plane for this first box. Now, as I draw that next edge at the front, I need to angle this inwards so that it is converging to that third vanishing point. Now as these boxes move further away from the centre, their vertical lines will converge on a more drastic angle, so that's something to keep in mind. Depending on how far away your third vanishing point is, you want to make sure that your drawings don't appear distorted. So I will continue to draw out more boxes here, and again it's the same process as drawing a box in 2 points perspective, except now these vertical lines are converging as well. And when it comes to estimating the angle of those, it can be tricky. You want to be mindful of the existing lines that you have already drawn. When I draw these out, I often look at the angle of the other lines, as this helps me draw in some more. Now, 3 points perspective is something I use when I want to create a drawing where I am looking down or up at something. The convergence of the vertical lines emphasizes this effect, so a common example is a bird's eye view from above, in which you might see images of buildings that are also converging similar to the boxes in this example. So here I have a series of boxes drawn out in 3 points perspective, and again I will outline these to finish this off. So that is 3 points perspective. So here I'm going to be drawing this image of an old barn surrounded by nature in 3 points perspective. Again, you can continue using all of the same equipment as you have been and follow along with this if you want to. I'm going to begin this drawing by drawing out the picture plane. This is a simple box which will act as the border for the image I am creating. Now the horizon line here is going to be placed right at the bottom. Remember, this is our eye level and I want to view this barn that I'm going to be drawing from down below, as if the camera is positioned looking up at it. Next I will place a vanishing point at either side. This time these won't be placed at the very ends though. Here I'll push them in a little bit and have them here. The third vanishing point will be above off the page, central to the horizon line and picture plane. Now I start constructing this barn by drawing out a box, and this box is going to be sitting on the horizon line. So here I draw out the front edge of the box, which of course is on an angle converging to that third vanishing point. I take some lines from the top and bottom of this to that left vanishing point, except I don't need to draw in that bottom line because the bottom of this box is level with the horizon line anyways, and so I can just leave that as it is. I now need to add the other edges for the box's side planes, and this line to the very left will converge a fair bit and be on a steeper angle as it's positioned further away from the centre. This line on the right will also be converging to the third point above, and here I continue to construct this box like any of the other boxes we have drawn in this session. Now that I have this drawn out, I'm going to divide the front and back plane. I do this by taking a line from each corner and finding that centre point, and then I can draw in that halfway line, which in this example will also be angled towards that third vanishing point. Remember that all of the lines we draw here will be directed towards a vanishing point. Now the reason I have divided the front and back plane up is so that I can extend this halfway line upwards a little and begin adding a pitched roof. I will be covering how to construct pitched roofs in a later session as well, but this here is pretty straightforward. I extend this line to a height I am happy with and take a line from the top of it to the left vanishing point. I then extend the halfway line on that back plane until it meets that line I had previously drawn. Now to finish this pitched roof off, I take lines from each corner of the box to the top of that extended halfway line, creating two triangles, which will be the pitched roof for this barn. I am also going to add a slight overhang here to make this look more like a barn, and on its front plane I will draw another rectangle for the door. To do that, I divide both halves of this front plane again, as I did before, taking some diagonal lines to each corner, and the lines for the doorway for this barn will be drawn at the centre points. I could have just estimated this, but I have used this technique again, and I can be sure that the door or opening here is central and that the distance on either side is the same. So now I am done constructing the barn, and now I need to add some surrounding environment. Here I am going to outline some trees around this barn, and the vertical lines for these trees, or more so the tree trunks, will also converge and angle towards that third vanishing point. I only lightly draw these out because these will be more defined as I start to render the drawing. Here I will finish off constructing the drawing by adding some details to the barn here so that I have an idea of how the image is going to look when I start to render it. So now I have finished constructing the drawing and I am going to render this using these pencils that I have here. Now when I create these drawings you'll notice that I only use a few pencils. I normally outline the drawing using a HB pencil, work into it with a 2B pencil and then finally switch over to a softer 6B pencil and darken the entire drawing, and I'll explain pencil grades and all of that in a later session, but now let's start to render this drawing. I'm going to begin by using the 2B pencil and I'll start to shade in this barn. Now this barn needs to look rather old and abandoned, so I create a texture that represents that. This texture involves drawing some vertical lines, except these aren't vertical, these are also directed towards that third vanishing point, but these lines I draw are the outlines for some wooden planks that will make up the walls of this barn. In some places I apply more pressure with the pencil to create a darker shade, giving the impression that a wooden plank is missing or part of the barn has been eroded away over time. This kind of texture is very simple to produce, but it looks effective. I make sure to be rather spontaneous with the lines I draw for these wooden planks, and I am always altering the pressure that I apply with the pencil in order to create darker and then lighter marks. So here I continue to work my way around the barn, creating this texture whilst considering the convergence of the lines that I add for the texture. It's easy to do that though, seeing as I have already outlined this barn here, which helps me judge the direction of all of the lines I create. I recommend you just take your time here and do your best to produce something similar to the texture that I have made here. You want to keep your pencil sharp so that your lines are fine rather than bold, and that will also allow you to be more precise. Now that I have finished rendering this barn, I begin working on the surrounding environment, adding some foliage such as grass and trees. Now that small space underneath where I position the horizon line is where the grass will go. So I work my way along covering this up, and I draw this grass by simply drawing a lot of lines randomly in various directions. I also make sure this grass crosses the horizon line in some areas, as I want to give the impression that this place is overgrown and abandoned. Towards the edge of the image, I raise the grass section upwards and I start to draw out this tree. I had some outlines already there which were converging to that third vanishing point. This texture I create for the tree trunk is similar to how I had rendered the barn. I make various lines in the same direction and roughly shade around it, alternating the pressure that I apply with the pencil to create varying shades. So I draw two trees out like this, and then once I have the trunks for the trees drawn out, I can start to draw the leaves. Now I draw these leaves out the same way as I have done in the drawings I have created in the previous sessions. I produce small circular motions with the pencil, which comes together to create these marks and a texture like this. You want to do this around where you want the leaves for the trees to be, but do consider the convergence of your lines as well. Even though the leaves for the trees and the overall shape is more organic, they will still converge to that vanishing point. In this case, these trees will converge to that left vanishing point. I also draw out another tree to the left, which again is converging to the third vanishing point. The leaves are drawn out the same way, and at this point I am able to put the 2B pencil aside and switch to the softer 6B pencil. Using this 6B pencil, I'm able to darken a lot of the drawing, adding more contrast and shading in areas so that they appear more realistic. I work over the texture that I had produced for the barn, but I make sure not to shade over the lines that I have previously added. I only want to darken what I have already produced here and define areas that were previously blending into the rest of the image. I work into the trees as well, adding some darker sections in the leaves, which also adds some life to them. And at this stage, it's really just a case of me working over everything I have already done, making adjustments if necessary, and getting the drawing to a point that I am satisfied with. So here is the final drawing. This is an old barn surrounded by nature in 3 points perspective. So there we go. I hope you have enjoyed this session of the Design Journey art class, and if you had followed along and created some drawings, then be sure to share them over on Instagram and also use the hashtag #MyDesignJourney and tag me in them as well at Dan Beershaw, because I'd love to see what you have created. And as always, I want to end this session by saying that you can start drawing now. Try and create a series of boxes like I did earlier in this session, as that will really benefit you and help you become familiar with drawing in perspective. With that being said, thank you for watching and joining me in this session.